Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to today's podcast. It is Matt, and we are here to discuss a very important question, and it is this: are leaders born or are they developed? Such an important question. I love talking about this with different people. And I believe as a leader of your organization, of your family, right, of your life, the answer to this is absolutely critical. And listen, I have my opinion on what the answer is. I'm sure you have your opinion on what the answer is, but I want to really dive into this today and talk about a few examples, because this is really a question of nature versus nurture, isn't it? And I remember a discussion that one of my coaches and I had, Jim Brogan, who was on the podcast. We'll link up his podcast episode in the show notes as well. Jim, just to give you a quick overview, he is obviously my coach. He's been my coach for a number of years, and his bread and butter is NFL quarterbacks. So fascinating to talk to. Works with executives as well, but he just has a phenomenal background. But Jim and I, a long time ago, had this discussion around, is it nature versus nurture? And the original context that we had this discussion under was athletics, right? And we were talking about, just the game of baseball, for example, right? We were talking about, like, in order to make it to the major leagues, is it nature, like you're born with it, or is it nurture that you work on it? And I wonder what your answer would be to that, right? Is it nature or is it nurture? And this doesn't just apply to sports. Let's talk about artists. Let's talk about musicians. Are they born with it? And that's what gets them to be the recording artist or that famous artist? Or is it the nurture piece, which is working at it and developing it? Now, what Jim and I discussed, and we both agreed upon, was that nature, right, what you're born with, absolutely has something to do with it. Right? I believe some people have natural athletic abilities. I believe some people have natural artistic abilities. Some people have natural musician abilities, right? They can pick up an instrument and play it, and they can just read music more easily or just be with the music, right? That's certainly an aspect to it, right? I've come across people who cannot throw or catch a baseball if their life depended on it. And maybe you've come across people like that. Like, if you asked me to go play some instrument, if my life depended on it, I don't know, I might as well say goodbye now. So I think nature absolutely plays a part in it. But what Jim and I discussed, and I think is more important, is that nurture, right? That nurture piece, the development piece, is highly underestimated. And we both believe that development piece, the nurture piece, is the game changer if you want to do amazing things in your life. You want to be that great artist, musician, athlete, business leader, salesperson. The nurture piece, the constant development of it, is the critical piece, right? And we negate that. We think, we were born with a little, but not enough to get to that level, right? And I always go back to that question of but what work did you put in to actually make that happen? That's something I'm focused on in what I do in my business. Is, am I ultimately willing to nurture myself, to develop myself, to surround myself with great people to make those sorts of things happen, or not? And if I'm not, then yeah, of course we're going to sit there and be like, I was born with some talent, but I really don't work at it to make it happen. So it's such a key thing. So when I look back at, are leaders born or are they developed? I believe both nature and nurture play a part, right? I believe you're born with this. I don't know. You want to grow teams, right? You have this, you want to be surrounded by people. You want to, you have something in you that's you want to be out front. I think that's something that you're absolutely born with. But more importantly, as I look at the people that I work with on a one-on-one basis, on my personal team at Matt Phillips Coaching, with different roles I've had in massive corporations here in the US and Europe. When I look at people, I constantly look at them about how they can be developed. I believe that. So how do I need to strategically develop them so they can be their best in whether it's here at this company or somewhere else, or whether they can be their best, personally, as the best father, the best mother, the best, you fill in the blank. How do I, as a leader, develop them to be the great leaders as well? And I truly believe that. I'm, very fortunate to, my business to not only work with, executives at great companies, to work with sales leaders at companies. I also get to work with athletes. And I've talked on this podcast before about the student athlete leadership program that we run, right? So it's coming alongside coaches and teaching these athletes how to utilize the mental side of the game and how to become great leaders. And the thing we emphasize all the time with these athletes is like, you were born with a skill, like you're playing high school level, whatever sport that is, for a reason, because you have a skill set, but you have to start understanding the nurture piece, the development piece, the consistency that you can employ if you want to become your best. That's the differentiator between good and the great, right? To steal Jim Collins, like that's the differentiator of what work are you willing to put in. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. This is belief of like, what can you actually do? You can have a different opinion than me. And maybe you don't think that leaders can be developed, right? And you're born with it. Okay. Well, keep listening, because I'm going to give you tips anyway to get the best out of yourself and others around you anyway. But assuming you believe what we believe, there's a couple of things that I want to discuss today that are critical to your success. And the things I want to discuss with you today, I want you to also potentially take and impart upon your team, impart on those around you. And it's something that we talk to our kids about, honestly, probably annoys them to death. Actually, no, it annoys them to death. I know I've told this story before, but my daughter, who's now 17, almost about to turn 18, she came home one day. I was having a tough day with, I don't know, friends. I can't remember what it was, to be honest, but she sat down and started talking to my wife and I about it. And then my wife and I kind of paused, and then we start talking, and she goes, "Stop." She goes, "I don't need a mental toughness talk. I just need you to listen." So I still laugh about that. So we have our mental toughness talks here at the Phillips household, if you ever need one as well. And it really annoys teenagers. That's what we found, at least. So, but again, even with our kids, right? It's like instilling this thing of like, you want it, go work for it. You want it, go work for it. And listen, it's not to say you're going to make the major leagues. It's not going to say you're going to sell a painting for $200,000. It's not going to say you have a platinum album. But don't underestimate the power of consistency, of focus, of wanting to channel your emotions, of being confident in yourself, of putting in the work, because that's what gets you where you want to go. And that's why I get to instill in these athletes, in my children, and business leaders and sales leaders around the world. That's why I love what I do. I found this quote by Vince Lombardi, right? For you Green Bay Packer fans, this is a shout out to you. But he says, I quote, "Leaders aren't born, they are made. And they are made just like anything else, through hard work." And I love that quote. And you've heard other leaders and athletes talk about this before, right? I often think of the, athletes or, artists, stuff like that, who they just keep talking about like, well, I just kept working at it, right? I kept doing the right things. I was willing to do things that others were not willing to do. How many times have you heard that? That's the nurture part. That's like putting in the work. And all of us, like, listen, there's no perfection on this side of the microphone here, right? With Matt Phillips, there's no perfection at all. Talk to my wife for 5 minutes, right? You'll find out there's no perfection over here. And there's areas that I look back and, making sales or doing sales outreach or, doing little things where I hesitated before, right? And I thought, well, am I born to do this? Was I made to do this? And we all hesitate. At least I do. And I often have to think back to this piece of, when we hesitate, there's something getting in our way. And oftentimes it's like, well, we're really supposed to be doing this or made to do this. And the reality is, yes, if we have that passion inside us, then we have to kind of over rely upon the nurture part of it, right? That we can make this happen. I've done it before, I can do it again, right? And go into that. That's why it's so important through hard work, doing the things that others aren't willing to do. I have this sign behind me that if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. If you're listening, you can't. But the sign behind me says, just keep going. right? When I look back at my, playing Division I college baseball, I was good at baseball in high school. I was fine. I never made any, big all-star, state teams or, went to the all-star game, stuff like that. Literally the only thing was that I hit a lot of baseballs and I just kept going when others weren't. So I was almost not willing to give up on the nurture side of things. That's what's so important about this. So I want to talk about 3 things that you can do to help make sure that nurture stays alive, and 3 things that you can impart upon your team. And the first one is this: defining what a great leader actually is. That's step number 1. And you've heard me talk about this before. Oftentimes, we use these words that are cliche. Do we know what they mean, but not really know what they mean? And being a great leader is one of them, right? If I want to be a great sales leader, if I want to be a great CFO, a great CRO, CSO, CEO, if I want to be great at that, what does great look like? Right? We have to, let's tap into our artistry for a minute, right? We have to paint the picture. We have to create the movie of this is what it looks like so that we know it when we see it. And oftentimes I hear, I love asking this question to people when I meet them for the first time. And the question is this: what's your leadership philosophy? Right? And I can ask you, what's your leadership style? I can ask you in a variety of different ways. But I love talking about this concept because if you can't describe what your philosophy is, which is really what I'm asking you, is what does great leadership look like in your mind? So I can see how you're going to show up every day and what the expectations are of me who works for you, right? Or with you. What does it look like? If you can't paint the picture, how do you know what you're marching towards? How do you know the actions you need to take to become great? And that's the first step, right? If I want to be a great athlete, I have to define this is what a great athlete means. This is the level I'm trying to get to. This is how this person acts and thinks and reacts. That's the first step with this whole thing, is crafting that picture. And that's, one thing that is one of our go-tos. It's the second thing that we do in every one of our programs is help people walk through this 4-step system to actually define and create their own leadership philosophy. Because it's, great to even talk about, but it's more important to be what actions am I taking to make sure that happens, right? That consistency in action. For all you sales managers and leaders out there, I wonder if you've ever thought the phrase, why in the world did I sign up for this? I know I have. The reality is that leading a team of salespeople can be challenging, right? Just figuring out how to motivate each person and keep the pipeline full and just dealing with the pressure of delivering the month after month results that your company's requiring. And call me an optimist, but admits the challenge, admits sometimes the frustration. We have this opportunity in front of us to really impart our knowledge, right? And to leave that legacy on our team and just achieve next level results. And that's why today I want to personally invite you to our free masterclass training, where I'm going to share the exact secrets, the exact framework that I teach sales leaders around North America to help just take you to next level results for you and your team. And it's actually the exact framework that I taught one of my clients who, over a 12-month period, tripled organic revenue growth and increased margin by 30%. So I want to invite you to that masterclass. You can click the link below or head over to mattphillipscoaching.com/webinar, and can't wait to see you in the training. But that's the first step, is I want you really thinking about what is your leadership philosophy? What is great leadership to you? And then what actions are you willing to take to make that happen? That's the first step with all of this stuff, right? If I want to be in the major leagues one day, I was just watching this special on Netflix about, I'm going to absolutely butcher his name, Ohtani. Yeah, Ohtani, the player for now the Los Angeles Dodgers. And he just signed a 10-year, $700 million deal. He's from Japan. And there's a special on Netflix you should watch. But one of the things they talk about was this goal sheet that he wrote out when he was a sophomore in high school. And I have it printed out right next to me here. Blown away by this. At such a young age, he defined where he wanted to go and everything necessary, the actions and the mindset to make that happen. Now listen, this is a unique thing. They interviewed Pedro Martinez, and I won't kind of go too far on baseball today, but Pedro Martinez pitched for the Boston Red Sox, legend. And, Pedro never did this, right? He said, wow, this is like next level. Well, I don't know why Ohtani decided to do this, and sorry for butchering the name, but it's pretty incredible. Same thing's true of leadership, right? We have to define it, think about it, and make sure we're doing the things to develop it. That's the first thing. What is a great leader anyway? And this is a great conversation with your team, by the way. Great conversation to have. Now, the next thing that I thought I mentioned today is the second thing that is a must-have to have this nurture concept really kick in and have a massive impact. You have to make time to develop your craft. But you have to. I was in Florida with one of my clients a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking leadership with the entire leadership team. And I asked for some, takeaways, and not only takeaways, action items that they were going to take out of the meeting. And gosh, I would say at least 75% of the room said that they were going to commit to taking more time to think about leadership, right? Because time is everything. And we are all busy. We have lots of stuff going on. I've got a long list of things that we need to accomplish as a team, that I need to accomplish, like recording this podcast right now. This is on my list. I'm doing it. I'm executing it. But it takes time to actually do that. That's why every Monday I have about an hour and a half carved out in my calendar that's non-negotiable, where I record the podcast, because it's important. I want to connect with all of you, right? As you're listening now, you're taking your time. I want to connect with you and talk about all these things, leadership, just what we're talking about today. But you have to set aside time. And maybe for you, it's reading books on leadership. It's listening to podcasts like this. It is, taking a class of some sort live that your company offers. Maybe it's taking one of our virtual programs or hiring a coach. I don't know what it is, but it's intentionally carving out the time to work on your craft, right? If I want to be a Major League Baseball player, but then I never actually take time to hit a baseball, chances are pretty unlikely highly, like virtually impossible that I'm going to make the major leagues. Same thing's true of like becoming a great leader. If you don't take the time to study this, to take action upon it, you're never going to be the great leader that you want to be. Go back to point number one, define what that is. But you're never going to get to that point. And I can't emphasize enough, right? That's why, again, I invest a lot in developing myself. This mastermind that I'm part of, we travel 3 times per year for 3 days at a time. So we're with the group for 3 days. So I'm traveling on the front end, Friday on the back end. So that's 3 weeks a year that I'm dedicated to just developing myself. The second, way that I develop myself is that I've got 2 coaches that I use. One kind of more infrequently, just as an ad hoc basis, but Jim, I'm more on a consistent basis. So I'm carving out time during. I'm constantly reading books. So last night I just finished another book, and I'll start a new one here coming up. And last night's one was all about the sales process. So this guy I've never heard of, saw this book on LinkedIn. I'm like, that might be interesting. Learned a lot from it. But it's that constant growth and development of myself. But you have to make the time to do it. And one tip I want to give you is that, at some point you have to make this decision. And I had to make this decision too, where you're going to decide to prioritize this sort of stuff higher than other things, or you're not. And if you do that, you will develop into the person you want to be. If you don't, it'll get lost in the shuffle just like everything else, right? So for example, if I want to go to the gym and get in shape and get ripped and, good for the beach and all that stuff. Well, when I wake up every day, when I start my week, let's start this way. When I start my week, if the first thing I do is plan out exactly when I'll do my workouts and what I'm going to do, chances are you're going to be successful. If I leave it to I'll figure that out at the end of each day, chances are you're not. And I hope you are. Maybe you're more disciplined than me, but I've got to plan ahead with a lot of this stuff. You have to set aside time, right? Going back to Vince Lombardi, you said that they are made just like anything else through hard work, and to be willing to put in the time and the work to make it happen. So for your team at work, maybe it's the question of hey, how much time do you all set aside to think about leadership, to read books, to take this program or that program and be that example for them in what you do and the time that you carve out. Remember, we have to set the example. That's number 2, right? So first is defining like what is a good leader. It's like painting that picture. Second is we have to make time to develop our craft. And the third is more of a mindset piece. And I need you to understand this third piece. You own your development, nobody else. You own it. Not your company, not your wife, not a mentor that you have, not your boss. No, you own your development. And if you wait around for someone to develop you, you're going to be waiting an extremely long time. That's something I found out kind of the hard way when I started my career. And listen, worked for a lot of great companies who offered a lot of great resources. And I'd sit around kind of waiting for like, well, when's the next class? And then the class would come and I'd sign up for it. And then it'd be a number of months, and the next class would pop up and then I'd sign up for it and take it. And I finally clicked one day. I think it was a conversation with one of my uncles. And he introduced this concept of like, you understand that like you own your development, nobody else, right? And it was such an important moment because the reality was he was 100% right. The companies cared about me. They did. I will never discount the opportunities I've gotten into each of these different companies. But the reality is that they can only do so much, right? And it's up to each and every one of us to decide what we want to do and how we want to do it, and to take like true ownership of it, right? What's the ownership mentality? I think I have it on my bookshelf here. Jocko Willink talking about extreme ownership. We hear this concept, but it's a game changer when we actually embrace it and we do it and we look in that mirror and say, you know what, Matt, or fill in your name of like, you own your development, right? What do we need to do today to develop ourselves to be better leaders, better husbands, fathers, mothers, wives, like whatever we need to do, what do we need to do to develop ourselves? And then we pick up that book or do that program or listen to that podcast or do whatever we need. But we have to understand that you own your development. I own my development. Nobody else. I run my own business now, right? So I don't have a boss, a CEO, or anybody telling me like, hey, Matt, you should really read that book, or you should read that sports psychology discussion on that, or that paper on this. Could be really useful. I've got to look in the mirror and tell myself I need to do that. And not that I need to, but I get to, because it helps me grow and provide more value to all of you. It's pretty incredible. So again, if you wait for your company or someone in your life to offer you some class or development, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be waiting a long time. And your people need to know this. They own their development. There are so many different examples. It was kind of funny. I was writing down, I was all about leadership classes at these different companies. I was born with it. I don't know. I've liked it, right? And I've kept it going. I've sought out these types of things. And I remember in particular, there was one story I'll share with you. I was working for a Fortune 500 company in Omaha, Nebraska. We lived there for about 3 years. And I knew I wanted to get better at speaking. Right? So we always hear about, executive presence and, the presentation skills, things like that. And I always wanted to get better. And I had heard about this organization called Toastmasters. I don't know how many of you have heard of that. I think it's toastmasters.org. It started like years and years and years ago listen, this is Matt Phillips making up a story here. I think this is true, but don't quote me on this or hold me to this. But I believe Toastmasters was founded like years and years and years, like a long time ago, to help prepare people to give toasts at weddings, things like that, or at events. And then it's just morphed and developed into this. Now you can go to one of these Toastmaster clubs and it's got this whole strategy and way to help you become a better speaker and presenter. And I was seeking these out in Omaha, and I went to one, but it was probably 25-minute drive from the office and things like that. And I'm like, it's tough to go in the middle of the day to this thing. And lo and behold, I said, okay, well, I don't want to go to Toastmasters. I'm going to have Toastmasters come to us. And so I went to the company I was working for and said, hey, I want to start a Toastmasters club here at the company. And how do I do that? How do I go about it? How do I get the money to do that? And it's a minimal investment, but this one other guy and I, another Matt, and I came together and started a Toastmasters club at this company. And then we have people from the company. We meet, I think it was once a month or once every couple of weeks. And we go through this program and get to talk and do all these things to make ourselves better. And that was a great learning lesson for me because I was fairly early on in my career. It was probably, I don't know, about 6 years into my career. And it finally clicked of like, if I want something, if I want to be better, then I got to go seek it out. And for minimal investment from the company, we were able to make it happen and create a lasting impression with a number of people within the company, right? You own your development. So again, whether it's reading, podcasts, whether it's just spending time researching things, it's joining a Toastmasters club, which by the way, side note, if you want to get better at presentation skills, go find a Toastmasters club. They're awesome. Like I highly recommend them. Might be doing a program, right? Shameless plug. Go check out our programs as well. But it's those sorts of things that are going to help move the needle. So again, to come back full circle to what we're here to talk about. Are leaders born or are they developed? You know my answer, right? Nature versus nurture. Yeah, you're born with it. You're born with some part of it, but don't discount the power of nurture, of development, because that is the bigger piece that's going to get you where you want to go. And the more time you invest, the more time you set aside, the more you define what that looks like to you, the more you understand that you own your development and no one else does, the faster you're going to get to where you want to go. That's what I want to encourage you with today. Take these 3 things we've discussed and run with it and shift your mindset and take action and start developing these things. Game changers for everyone. I love talking about this concept. If you ever want to spitball this with me, maybe you disagree, maybe you agree, maybe you have some good story to share with me about how you owned your development and got you to where you're at today. Hey, share it with us. All right, shoot us an email over at the team at meticulously.com. We'll read it, take a look at it. We'll reply. I'd love to hear those stories. But we're here for you in your development. So with that, my developing leaders who are born with that passion, but focused on the development of themselves, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, of your week. Thank you for tuning into the podcast episode this week. And hey, we'll see you on the next one. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator, mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.